Welcome to my podcast, eSTEAMd Women. It used to be called Silence, then it became Innovation, and now finally women are more empowered than ever to use their voices to express what it's really like to strive and thrive in what tends to be a very male-dominated world. I'm sure it hasn't been easy, but these women have really achieved and accomplished. They're truly esteemed women who have chosen careers in science, technology and innovation. They're typically go-getters, alpha females, hard-working and maybe even a little bit perfectionistic, but on the whole, they've applied their talents and skills to really make a difference. That was certainly my own intention when working as a mechanical engineer. In these episodes, you'll get a chance to hear about some fascinating innovations, but you're also likely to be inspired and uplifted by the personal stories and experiences of my amazing guests. So let's hear it from my STEM sister, an incredibly talented, esteemed woman, Vanessa Burton, a geotechnical engineer.
Hello, I am Vanessa Burton, and I'm a geotechnical engineer working in the industry.
Geotechnical engineer? What does that mean?
Alright, that is a good point. How many times have I been asked that? So a geotechnical engineer is someone who basically, like a civil engineer, but works in the ground. So that may be designing foundations, embankments, slopes, underground structures, soil structure interaction. So it's a list of things.
Why did you decide to go into something like that? Because it's not very... Off the bat, it doesn't really sound that feminine.
So I'm going to say it found me. It's probably a in between. So I think from school, I enjoyed maths, science and art. I then went to go study civil engineering at university, which was grand. And then at university, I got awarded a scholarship. And through the scholarship scheme, I got placed with McDonald and in their department of foundations and geotechnics, which is actually a really cool department because they do structural, or you could say civil engineering, so you structural engineering as well as geotechnical engineering together. So you design, that's what I'm saying, like underground structures, as well as piles, foundations, and I never left. I stayed since I was, I think, 18, 19, and I just really enjoyed it. So I think it found me, or I found it, but it wasn't something I knew about.
Yeah, I mean, because you said you were strong in maths and physics, like what was the actual kind of decision, okay, I'm going to try something like this? Because I don't know whether it was the same for you, but engineering just wasn't really on the map.
So it was really funny. So when you're definitely right, it was on the map. I think maybe not as much today, but everybody goes back to, there was a book, before we had the internet, where you'd flick through and see what careers there were. And I always loved buildings. I remember going on holiday. I always loved infrastructure. Even to this day, when you go on holiday, you go see the bridge or the skyscraper. And I was like, I want to be involved in this. I did a trial run, or can I say a week, working at the Architecture Foundation. That was when I was back in college. And I was like, architecture's great, but I want to know how it works. I want to do the math side, So I want to be the person that really understands how that structure goes together. And then from there, someone said, all right, why don't you give civil engineering? There was a time that I thought I wanted to do aeronautical engineering. I remember that. And then, but I realised I just enjoyed structures more.
Yeah. And like when you were on your course, were there many people that looked like you?
No. So I always tell this story. First day in the course, walking in the room, entered, looked at the room. So this is when you had everybody, because your first year of engineering, that was mechanical, chemical, you all together, civil. And I walked straight back out and I had to go and breathe because I just looked at, so I got there a bit later than everybody else as well, which probably wasn't the right thing to do. I probably should have got there first had I've known. I just walked into this sea of faces looking, and the room basically looked the same to some extent. And I went, I think I've gone wrong here. I was like, and coming from South London, or just, it's quite a diverse place, you know, even your schools are diverse. And well, I was lucky too that you just have different people. And I remember, and it wasn't even just down to colour, it was down to gender. Like, you're one of the only women as well. And I was going, right, well, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb for these next couple of years. So yeah, I went and breathed a couple of times and then walked back in.
I mean, a couple of breaths doesn't seem like much to take on like a wall of homogenous looking people.
I think it was like you had to go in, you know, it was you were going in, you knew that I think for most people, when you're the only person in the room, you know that you're the only person in the room, whether it's 20 people, 100 people, 200 people, like, you're very conscious of it. So it was kind of going, right, well, I've got to go into this room and I'm going to do this course. So I'm going to have to walk in. But I remember just feeling petrified and looking, going, I just felt so out of place. When you looked around, you're like, right, this is going to be a very interesting next couple of years.
What was driving you? Because you so easily could have gone, actually, do you know what? I'm going to do something else. So
I'm really lucky. And I say this probably for me, on my personality, like, I come from a family who never pushes you to do things in that way. So they wouldn't say to you, you've got to be a doctor, you've got to be a lawyer, you've got to be an engineer. So it was always my choice.
Right.
I think for me, having that throughout my life has been really fortunate, because I know that this is my choice. Like, where if it was someone else's, it might have been where I could have gone, well, actually, I don't want to do this, I don't drop out. But I chose to be there. You know, I picked this course. This was my doing. So it meant more so that actually I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And I think, like I said, for me, coming from that kind of environment, I've always been really fortunate for, because even though my parents might want me to do something else, I don't know. But it was my choice to make. And so that was probably my drive, because I know that I picked to do this.
I mean, sometimes we make choices because we've had a load of information where you're like, all right, civil engineering sounds like it's right for me. And then when you actually go and do it, it's like not what you thought it would be. Like, were there ever times on the course where you wanted to give up or wanted to change, or you kind of regretted your decision?
Oh no, I think I asked my mum to come and get me about 4 or 5 times, especially in those first years. Like, I remember, you know, ringing home and going, I don't think I can do this, or I don't think this is for me. And I remember, like, it's a bit of a laugh, before even going to university, not a bad way, but I remember, you know, as your parents do, they go, oh, my daughter's going to go do civil engineering. People are like, are you sure? You know, that's a tough call. So before you even started, you're kind of filled with this doubt of going, have I done something wrong here? Then you get there, and anybody know who does an engineering degree, like, when it's over, it's over. Where you kind of pat yourself on the back and go, I got through those years. But as you're doing it, there's a slight part of you, and maybe not for all people, that go, am I actually going to be able to finish it? Because it is hard. It's no easy. It's so vast. There's so many things to learn. There's such a breadth to it. So yeah, I definitely picked up that phone a couple of times to say, can you come and get?
What was pushing you through? Because, you know, I relate to it being hard. I relate to not seeing many people that look like me on the course. But something was keeping us going despite all of that adversity. And like, was it just the absolute love of infrastructure, or was there something else driving you?
So I think it was a mixture. I think, for one, someone inside told me that I could do this, and I knew that I could be good in this industry. Like, and not saying in a terms of accolades or achievements, I knew that my personality would fit this industry. I didn't mind to stand out in a way that I'd be the only person in the room. Like, yeah, it still does affect you, because it affects everyone. Like, when you're the only person. But I didn't feel like that was going to be my blocker. And I always say, maybe because it's just a bit stubborn, where I'm like, well, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. I think also from like a home perspective, we definitely, like, my granddad would always have this saying where he'd say, if something's meant for you, it's meant for you. There's nothing that can stop you. And if you try and do things that aren't meant for you, you're just not going to enjoy it, or never going to be good at it. You have to do the things in life that either make you happy, or you enjoy, or you thrive at. There's no point in trying to force yourself to do something, because you'll just end up not wanting to, or failing at it and feeling it. And I think for me, it was like, I know that I can do this. I think also I was really lucky, and I've got to give my university a really good pat on the back. They were lovely. My lecturers were lovely. And I had probably throughout the first year, I made such a good set of friends, like long life friends to these days, where, we still have laughs at, I'm not saying you should for anybody who watches this, but at 3 o'clock in the morning in the library, trying to get things done, because, you have to submit, and we had some laughs, even in those tough times when you had to figure out the world, or, you had, because it was always like group work, and as everybody know, or even revising for exams. And literally, I think they were also my saviors in that, where you just had a good set of people who you all wanted to do well together. And yeah, I think even through those hard times, we would laugh. We and that kind of also was a great way to get through, especially in those later years, because you knew you had a support system. And I feel like, whether it be university or anything, if you have those people that you can have a laugh with in those hard times, it just makes it easier.
Yeah. So was that support network part of that homogenous wall of people?
Yeah. So I think at university I joined the what do you call it now? I was
union.
I was part of the union, so the Civstock Union. I was also part of the ACS, so the Afro-Caribbean Society. I had friends that were in also other societies as well. That we kind of remember, because I used to do events, so I would put on parties, basically. That was my job. And we'd join up all together. We literally would have joint nights, and it was building in homogenous or little groups, and different even different race groups or cultural ethnicities. We just join them all together. Come on, it's a great way to find something that we all enjoy. I would also say, like, my lecturers, and there's a couple and they know who they were, like they, even to this day, when I see them, I run and give them a hug, and I will probably run and give them a hug my entire career, if not my life. They were such a good support system, and not in terms of, you know, being easy on you or anything like that, just being like, of course you can do this, of course you can do it, of course go and try, why
Wow.
not you?
Which uni did you go to? It sounds like heaven.
I went to Surrey, and I really like it. I went to Surrey University, and I will definitely sing their praises. I was in a very, Surrey's very small, and I didn't even know about Surrey when I joined. I was one of those people that the people that tell you never to choose a university because of your friends. I did exactly that. I picked the university because of my friends, and because they had this Surrey scholarship scheme. And I went there, and it was such a nice, cozy place. You know, you felt so safe. And not say like throughout all those years, not say you don't have your troubles or your issues or it's not hard. But looking back, and even when there, I felt safe, and I think that's the one thing I felt was when you join or go in, or whether it be work or in university, and you're the one that stands out, feeling safe is so important. It's probably why I talk about it so much, even, you know, when people join work later in diversity or equality inclusion, because actually more importantly is when you feel like you belong in that group, even though your thoughts are different, you come from different backgrounds, you know, state school, private school, rich, poor, socioeconomic, race, wherever it is, it doesn't matter. When you feel like that, your differences are okay and accepted. You don't want to be the same, but that has to be accepted. And I was lucky with that. It gave me a good stead.
Yeah, speaking of diversity and inclusion, like I heard you speak at a diversity and inclusion event at the Royal Academy of Engineering. And your words just really hit me. The way you described the need for diversity and the need for inclusion. And you spoke really passionately about what underrepresented people go through. And it just, listening to you made me realize just how important it is to encourage diversity, because I think, you know, these words get used so much that they're kind of oversaturated. And so people don't necessarily appreciate the weight that those words come with. What are your perspectives on it now? Because you sound like someone who really found her tribe. Is there a problem of diversity in engineering today?
Yeah, of course there is. I wouldn't ever state that. Well, there's two things. So one, because I think like you have to, these two things always get pushed together as one. And I actually think they're really separate. So firstly is diversity in engineering, and secondly is inclusion in engineering. Because a lot of people, and possibly, you know, someone can disagree and challenge, and that's the great thing about having a different opinion, but people think they're the same thing. So diversity is diversity of thought, and people from different backgrounds and people from different walks of life come into the industry. Yeah, we do have a problem. We are getting better. We are finding other routes to get there. We are trying to change the perception of engineering. Like, and sometimes we do have still today when someone goes, "Are you sure you're an engineer?" And you're like, "Yes, I'm very sure. I go to work every day." Like, I'm very unusual when I walk through that door. Yeah, that's definitely what my job title says. Like, and that's one part of engineering. The second part is that inclusivity. So it's people who come into engineering and whatever background they're from, neurodiversity, and all the protected characteristics, and do they feel included? Do they feel that their voices matter? Do they feel that their thoughts matter? Do they feel safe? Are they treated with respect? Because as you all know, there's always taglines. We have taglines for everything. Leadership, the 3 this or the 5 that, or the Asians and the rest of it. And they're great because you need strategy. But actually you need people to do things. You need people to act. You need for initiatives to take place and to make an impact. Because without it, you're not going to see change. Or what you will see, sadly, is a reversal, where you'll see change and then actually people go, we can't sustain this anymore. And then you go back to what it was before. And you see this sometimes. If we look around the world, in women's rights, for instance, look how, I won't say where, but we can see places where they've reverted backwards. And in order to keep moving forward, in order to ensure that we go to where we want to, and the problem is that we have with diversity, and it's not a problem because we, as an engineer, we get to find the solution. So I'm going to take it as positive, but no one knows what diversity looks like. No one knows what inclusion looks like or feels like. We have a thought to what it feels like and looks like, but in reality, there's been no time in our history of mankind that we have done so, because actually it's our exclusions that have led us, whether it be in power, whether it be in laws, and people have fought to change that. So we are doing something so different that we're going to try and be inclusive to everyone. Try is the word I'm going to put there. Bring people in. We're going to make sure they feel safe. We're going to challenge all the unconscious biases that we've had since evolution started and change the way we think and actively work on changing how we treat people. And that is going to take time, but we're active. Well, hopefully everybody's actively doing so. And I do hope so, because then we will have a lasting, long life change that won't just affect engineering, but it'll affect our society.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the problem is deeply complex and multi-layered, because, even just right there, you made the distinction between diversity and inclusion, separate notions. And it's like, how do we tackle this problem? I guess my question to you is, how do we tackle this problem, and how are we doing so far? Because I've been around for decades, and I have seen a lot of change recently, but the issues have been discussed for a long time. So what needs to happen, in your opinion?
So I think, I'll start with some of the problems probably that we have. As humans, we like to put everybody into boxes. So the sexuality box, the religion box, the race box, the culture box, the gender box. When really, if you're a parent, if you're a carer, etc., age, the problem that is that as humans, as you all know, we're not one box. I'm not Vanessa, the female, that's different to Vanessa, the mum, that's different to Vanessa, who's mixed race, Vanessa, that's Caribbean. You're not separate. It's all part of who you are that makes you up as a person. And sometimes what we try and do, and you can get that because otherwise it becomes too complex. So we try and segregate the problem is we just put people into boxes, forgetting that actually people are more than just a box. I think when we look at diversity inclusion as well, and I will say the fundamental is how we treat people. And also, and people may disagree, but also checking our conscious or unconscious biases. Because if we do have them, and everybody will have them, like I said, it's part of evolution, but checking them, sponsoring other people, going to speak to other people, understanding. I think what we have at the moment is, and obviously in certain situations, if it's wrong, we have a bit of a cancel culture, that people are too scared to speak and people are too scared to actually talk about the issues and talk about diversity. And quite rightly so, because you don't want to be cancelled, lose your job, etc., etc. So making safe spaces where you can understand someone's different viewpoint, I think that was one thing where, you know, being a network chair or a race group, but also being able to listen to all the other networks, that was enlightening. There is so much learning you can do to understand someone's different point of view that actually was not maybe in your circle of friends, your home, etc., or understand from their perspective, maybe where they haven't come from like a diverse background, or they actually disagree and don't believe that diversity is an issue at all, you know, and actually just hear their point of view. Because the problem is that if you don't talk about these things and you don't discuss them rationally and you don't have an understanding of where people are, you're not going to be able to make much change.
Some people might argue that there's nothing to change, because I'm really playing like devil's advocate here.
Go for it. We love it. This is what makes changes.
But it's like, I find that the goal is always financial. It's always driven by some sort of commercial gain. And so when you're trying to make change, it's often, it needs to be proved in a sort of P&L, profit and loss. And it's like, I guess what I'm trying to put out there is, why should people make the effort? I know why, you know why, but why should the majority make the effort when everything is kind of in their favor to sort of keep them in power?
That's a really good question, I think. And that's something that, do you know what, gets talked about, not just in engineering, but I think in industries and schools and everything. It's the same conversation. In my opinion, and I'm going to go for engineering, we have a skills shortage, a serious skills shortage. And we have remarkable young people and people in the industry who are phenomenal, who are there and who are leaving, and who aren't leaving the industry because they dislike engineering. And that's why I want it to resonate. If you leave an industry because you don't like your job, grand. You don't like it, it's not for you, you tried it, you gave it a go, see you later. You know, you're going to on your way to find whatever passion you have. If you are leaving an industry because you don't feel welcomed, or you cannot progress, or you do not feel like you can make the difference that you know you can make, that loss is to that industry. And that's the basis of it. So if we go back to profit and loss, if we go back to the skill shortage, if we go back to the infrastructure we need, if we go back to the critical infrastructure we're going to need, because as you can see, we're going through climate change, you know, and for those who maybe don't believe in climate change, fine, but we have critical infrastructure that we need to update. We this and maintain. There's so many things and new infrastructure, and we need to progress and build better, and that's what we want to do. That's why engineers are so important. You know, they are the unsung heroes, and not just be it civil engineers. If people tell me they don't want engineers, I'll tell them, you know, go a week without your smartphone or your television and tell me how you're feeling, or that internet that you use, you know. So if we're losing people for these reasons, I think as an industry, we need to take a stop and a look and say what's going on here. Because actually, those in power or those who don't believe, etc., you'll be hurting yourself. Because at the moment, and not even in terms of for that person's well-being who's leaving, so we'll leave that alone for 1 minute because it's the right thing, the moral thing to do. You have people that leave an industry. Those people left are then at risk of severe burnout. We have higher suicide rates in engineering. We have higher burnout rates. We have higher mental health issues. So as a whole, we want to build an industry where people can do the best job they can do in their areas of expertise to build for the future. And like I said, if we have people and those skills are being lost for anything other than the fact that they do not like the industry that they're in, we've gone wrong. And we collectively need to do something about it.
Oh God, hearing you say that strikes really, really deep. Because I've never heard it phrased that way, but you know, sorry to make it about me, but I've got a PhD in engineering and I'm not in engineering anymore. And the way you've described it, I've never framed it that way, that actually I didn't feel welcome. But that is the truth. I felt so uncomfortable. I tried, but you know, after a while, I just was like, this is so uncomfortable. Day in, day out, just feeling like I was just not welcome. I was like the odd one out. And, you know, I see such strong women today, like yourself and other young engineers coming through who have support, who can talk about these issues openly, who are being given opportunities to be heard, to be seen, to be encouraged. And there just wasn't that when I was graduating or when I was like early on in my career. And it's just, I've never said this ever, because I sound like I'm making excuses. And so there's always this danger of like, you know, I didn't leave engineering because I didn't like it. I loved it. You know, my God, I put enough hard graft into it, you know.
Yeah, you got a PhD in it, yeah.
to actually contribute to the industry. But because, you know, I couldn't hack always feeling on the outside.
I think it's
and you're right, you know, the industry lost someone.
No, it has, and I think it's a really good point you make, because and some people maybe argue that it's not true, and that's grand, but so I joined the network around 2016, 17. And I remember at that time, no one was speaking about race at all. Like, I always make the joke still to this day, like, because I was asked, Ness, do you want to join our race network? I think you'd be really good at it. And I was going, I'm going to get fired. when we talk about race at work.
This
Race.
is 2017.
This is, yeah, 2017. And I know it because I'd literally joined and then went 2016, 17 because was going on maternity leave. So it was that's a good way to remember it. I was like, yeah, I'm joining the network, right, I'm ready. And, you know, no one was really talking about race. Like, people talked about the issues in communities, but not the way it is today, you know. And it was a really long journey where, you know, even as a company and having these networks, and I don't think they're mind us saying it, like you had plans within the industry. You had plans, you're going to change the world. And then you kind of realize, as all people in networks do, and they'll probably hopefully agree with this or anything, yeah, you got to take this slowly but surely, one step at a time. You know, the grand plans that you have, and I think I said it where we did an event and we got different companies from the industry to join to speak in Black History Month throughout. And I was like, I planned this back in 2017 in my head, you know, and we were so excited to join in with the different companies when they said, do you want to join? We're like, yeah, because this was like a goal. Every year it was on the action list. Every year we were going to do it. Every year we were going to try. And it wasn't yet the right time. And it's one of the things we say now is going, you know, we have to remember that those joining the industry, or when I joined, because I was just maybe a graduate, so still in that graduate phase of my career, that gave me a voice. That gave me and I'll always be thankful for that opportunity, because it gave me a voice to talk about very difficult conversations. I think if you could talk about race then, company, but just outside in the industry and your wider industry, yeah, that provided a way to kind of navigate conversations and really hear different viewpoints. But I think also it meant that actually for all those who are already in their career, we had to state that actually they have to build trust that this isn't just a phase or a fad, because they might not have felt in this way. Because when we talk about diversity and race and everything we do now, and not saying it wasn't always important, but how it's shed to light, actually we've had people in their careers for a very long time who didn't get to speak about this stuff, who, you know, would have had to conform, dealt with microaggressions and all these things we learn about now, unconscious bias and conscious bias training. There wasn't any of that 20 years ago. And if there was, I did.
Because I was a graduate in 2004.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're talking 13 years before you were a graduate. I mean, you just did not talk about race. You just didn't.
Politics, the things that you were taught to never talk about at work. Yeah, race, religion, and politics.
And like back then, being female was about, you know, wearing baggy clothes and trying to cover up your femininity. You know, it was like, you just had to just not acknowledge that you were female. And it's like, but I'm the only one. And, you know, I don't want to act like a girl. Oh my God, it was so complicated back then. You know, today I really see this whole like mentoring, reverse mentoring, like, you know, I see an appetite for colleagues wanting to learn from each other. I think there's a long way to go, but there's definitely this openness to, we better listen, you know, we better try and be open-minded about this.
And I think like the one thing, because I completely agree, you know, when you speak to women in the industry and they always talk about how they had to feel like they had to conform or change, or acting more of a, or would be fine as a male manner to maybe a female manner. You know, they had to, and it's really interesting because, like I said, is that you're going, but that's how they had to be. It's not that it was right or wrong. And some people say, well, yeah, well, they should have like put forward and they should have stamped up. Yeah, everyone has bills to pay. You know, like everybody wants a career, no one wants to feel sidelined. Voices weren't heard in the same way. You couldn't raise things in the same way. And it's really always great, like listening to these women. And just hearing, because then when you listen to them, you become more appreciative of where you are.
Yeah.
But also where we need to go.
I'm hopeful because things have changed a lot. And what I really see now is women like yourself, like basically running with the ball. It's like, you know, often the ball is thrown to the underrepresented, and it's really kind of, it's crucial that when you've caught that ball, you run with it. Like, you take those opportunities, you speak up, you allow yourself to be a role model, you know, and you act by example, because it just paves the way for others.
And I think, like, maybe one of the reasons why, so as in I spoke about, like, race was one of those ones you didn't speak about in those days. I think also my interest was, so like I said, I'm mixed race. So I come from a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multiracial family. And luckily for me, I've seen how it works. Different religions, different viewpoints, different colours of skin, from different places. Naturally, again, touch wood, you know, I've seen how actually you blend. You don't try and conform, but you blend, you harmonise. So I think, to me, like, I just thought the world was like that. I was like, oh. And then reality hits a bit more, which is grand. And then reality hits a bit more. But then you're like, but I know it can be like that, because it isn't, because some people think, you know, and it's one of those things where it can be saddening sometimes to listen to, where they're like, well, by diversity, it means taking away opportunities from others, or it means giving jobs to, for instance, diverse targets, if it's just women or those from different ethnic backgrounds, like just giving away jobs. And no, it should be on, and it always will be on merit. And it shouldn't be around taking away. It's putting the right people in the right roles at the right time. Because actually, if we did that, everybody may find their perfect role. You know, and everybody may find that place where actually they're very happy. When you hear statistics of people not happy at work or not liking their role or etc., you know, is that really what you want to do? Or do you feel like you have to do it? Do you feel you have to climb this ladder in that way? Actually, was there someone else who would have loved that role and you could have done something else? You know, and I think that's a bit, that's saddening, where you hear where people just feel like it's a target, and then it undermines the people that actually gets. You can feel like it can undermine the people that are actually in those roles or gets the role, because before they've even started, a bit like what I said about going to university, they're like, are you sure? Are you definitely? You're already putting doubt in their mind before they even got there. So not only have they potentially worked extremely hard against the odds to get there, before congratulating on the achievement and being like, right, let's support you to do the best job ever, it's already feeling that doubt into someone else's mind that you wouldn't have done with someone else. And I think, you know, and I think the other side and the other foot is when opportunities are given to those, to say, or we talk about, you know, males that are white, etc., also to not be like, well, now, oh, it's just because they're white and male. Because that's the reversal side on it, which I think we also have to play at. Or it's not because they just went to an elite university. The happiness of me in diversity and what hopefully I'll see in my lifetime, when someone gets a role and it was, yeah, because they were the right person for the role. And that's it.
Mm.
You know, it's not going, oh, they went to this university, or oh, this is the racist skin, or oh, it's because they're from a black background and it's just or because of gender or because of no, they were just the right person for the role. And I think that's the place we have to get to and actually celebrate people's achievements, because what was really crucial, it was at one time, and I remember watching, not just in engineering and central, it became a bit of us and them, whether it be university, whether it be gender, whether it be race. It just became a very us and, you know, you're in this group, as I said before about grouping. When that was, if we're reaching for true diversity, and maybe I live in a bit of a hopeful utopia, what it means is actually the person got promoted because they're the best. And that's what we should be striving towards and for. And the person's there because they've got the skills. And if they haven't got all the skills, they're going to gain all the skills, but they've got something inside them that gets them to where actually we want to be. And that trust to go, actually, that's what you want to see, or that's what I would really like to see. And that's what I would like to hear more of. Not the undermining of, oh, because it's because of a target, or it's because of this, or it's because of that. Actually, let's stop a minute and say, no, they were just the best person for the role. And let's congratulate them because they are.
I really love that sentiment. Like, that's so powerful, and it's really consistent with what I'm hearing about your upbringing. Because what I hear from like your childhood experiences is that you were living in a diverse kind of family, and you learned and observed how your family worked at harmonizing. And it feels like you're taking that into your sort of professional experiences. And the idea of the role going to the best person for the job is really it's really comforting in a way, because it does feel like there's a lot of change happening in engineering, but also the wider sort of societal context, where there is a lot of movements for change, you know, whether that's Black Lives Matter or Me Too, you know, all these big issues that have come up over the last few years. And it's like, when change is happening, it does get very unstable and very insecure. There's a lot of, I mean, change is uncomfortable. So the idea that actually change is tending towards a state that is fair, as in, like, yes, we talk a lot about like we should have a 50-50 C-suite, or at least 30% women at C-suite. You know, many companies have that goal. And then you get women who feel really uncomfortable because they feel like they were only appointed because they're trying to fill that quota. It causes so much unrest. But the idea that actually, I'm with you. I hope we get to a point where people are appointed just because it doesn't matter what they look like, but it's just because they are the right person for the job.
Because they're good, yeah. And I think that's, and what does good look like? That's probably another question, and that'll be, another, because as you go up, I've seen the ladder, different skills are required, and different skills for different roles and etc. But I think we really, the time that we're in right now, I think, is we're working on equity. And that's because we didn't have equality. So we're having to work very hard on equity. And that is building back a balance, providing opportunities, providing sponsorship, and not just financial, but saying someone else's name, to the name that someone would always say, giving out opportunities, etc. Because at the time, if we remember, everything was about equality. And I think everybody kind of looked and said, hold up a minute, we can't have equality in all things, because actually people are different. And it's that kind of, there's this great image, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was a person in the wheelchair, the child, and the person standing, and they're trying to look over the fence. And it's like, this is what equality looks like, but equality doesn't mean it's equal. So you need to provide equity. So you need to provide the right solution for different people. And I always remember that. I'm like, yeah, we need to look at actually equity. And hopefully if we provide equity, it will then lead to equality.
So what do companies need to do?
So I'm going to put first on, I think that all companies should publish their race pay gap. I'm going to start with that one. And I remember in my former company, they did it in, I think it was 2019, first one published. And not that, because I know we just spoke about data and statistics, etc. But actually, if you want to publish it even outside your doors, know your own numbers. I think that's really important. I think it's very important that, and you should publish it, but you should also know your numbers and put it alongside your gender pay gap. I think there needs to be a lot of discussions around both, so the pipeline to bring people into engineering, but also those people who may be already in engineering, and actually how are they going to progress? Do you find those people that, because like I said, when the differences of what we said before, 13 years, right? So of when we started and the difference of what that looked like, and actually the difference of someone starting today and the difference what that will look like. Having conversations in place, making sure, and I was saying ensuring that there are safe environments. And I think it was Richard Branson, but I don't want to quote him if it wasn't, but I'm going to say it was him, where he was like, I think he was a person that said he trains his people so well that they could always get a job, but then they never choose to leave. And I thought that was the most brilliant quote in the world, where it is, we give people opportunities and we know that everybody wants them and they know that they want to stay. That is what I think is the epitome of a brilliant company. Because everyone that means is excelling and wanting, and if it wasn't him, I'll find out the person who it was, but I'm sure it's him. But, excelling, wanting to do well, because actually for you as a company, that's just going to lead to so much progression. That's going to lead to innovation. That's going to lead to diversity of thought. That's going to lead to mistakes not happening, and actually people challenging. Like I said, we work in engineering. I love a challenge because I want to be right before it goes out the door. And not that I don't trust my own instincts, but the whole point is you see a different viewpoint. So actually someone may be like, but did you think about this? No, I perhaps hadn't. Do you know why? Because I can't think about. So you need that diversity of thought. You need the different viewpoints. You need people to feel safe enough, because if the more people feel that their opinions, I think, are valid and they speak up, the more actually you get to a point where you create more what society wants and it needs. And people feel more safer to then push themselves also.
Vanessa, there is so much empowerment and power in your words and just your overall demeanor. And I'm thinking of the little girl who is listening to you thinking, "Oh, I want to be as badass as Vanessa when I grow up." But it's like, where does that come from? Because let me just try and describe what I'm thinking. It's like some people just feel very, very limited or unable to have that kind of confidence, and you're very bold. Like, where does that boldness come from?
Again, I think it's my upbringing. I think, like I said, I'm really lucky, and for both my grandfathers, they'd be like, "There's not any room that you can't walk into," you know. And I was really lucky because, as a female, I should say, I was never told that I can't do something because I was female. Actually, sometimes I'd be like, "Is this really my role?" They'd be like, "Yeah, because you got to be independent. You know, you've got to be able to fend for yourself." And I have some really actual strong women. So my grandma.
On that note, actually, because you are a mum,
Yeah.
and you're also an engineer. How have you juggled that?
How have I juggled that? Do you know what?
Like, what's the secret?
I just did it. You wake up every day, you know we've got a really great partner that supports me. And I always say, you know, you need a partner to support your dreams. And you need someone who kind of also not, I won't say fights in your corner, but gives you the
It's got your
opportunity
back.
to thrive. Yeah, it's got your back, or it gives you the opportunity to thrive. And I think it's knowing that you're not going to be perfect every day, but you're going to do the best that you can do. And we're here now, you know, this is life. So you're going to live it. And if you're going to just try and do the best that you can do, because that's all you can do. Well, some people may not want to, but that's all I can do. So that's all I'm going to do. Just wake up every day and try.
But did you not face sort of commercial, not negativity, but just kind of like resistance to you wanting to be a mom, needing time out to be a mom? Like, did you not get that sort of kind of patriarchal, like, you know? And if so, how did you fight against it?
I think it was so within my like circle of the industry, no, it's fine. Take maternity leave and we'll see you back. like I said, I joined the art network during that time. So my keep in touch days, for those who don't know, is when you go to the company for a certain amount of days. Actually, I went to like diversity conferences. I remember that was the first time I started going to those, as well as keeping in touch with my engineering. I did a geotechnical module on my maternity leave. That was a good fun at university. In the outside industry, yes, I remember like in the out and comments of, well, if you have a kid, your career is going to be over. You can't work full time. You can't do that. And there's a lot of people in this world that tell you just can't do stuff. This is what I've realized. Like, and there's a habit of it. People always tell you can't do stuff. And I think, again, like being from the background I'm from, they're just like, just because they can't do it doesn't mean you can't, or you can. Like, they couldn't do it. That's, they may not have been able to, but that they're not you and you're not them. And that's what I say, like, you come from a totally different way, you have different thinking. Why can't you do it? Now, it doesn't mean you don't heed advice and listen. I'm not that brave enough to say I don't heed advice and listen to people's advice. But it's something I've always been brought up with, that advice is given on people's experiences. But they're their own experiences. So yes, take the lessons learned from it, but it doesn't mean that you can't do something. There's always got to be a first, or there's always got to be someone, or what is it? Take the road, not take it. Someone's got to pave the way, and if it's not you, then who? So if you're going to be that person, then do it.
I've been slowly trying to formulate your secrets for being an incredible human being, an engineer, and mum, and all the roles that you play. And interject if I'm getting this wrong, but I'm really hearing someone who has had an amazing network of support growing up, and in those sort of like formative years, you've really learned to believe in yourself. And there's no challenge too great for you. And I think like you just like exude this rock solid self-belief. Now, I'm sure you have days where you're like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I don't know, like, can't figure this out. But generally, you just have this really strong foundation of like, why wouldn't I be able to do stuff? Bring it on, bring on the challenges. And, now that you're in engineering, you're in industry, it sounds like you have continued that network of support, like through your colleagues. You're in a workplace that is incredibly value you. And I think it comes from valuing yourself ultimately.
Yeah, I would say like everyone has their hard moments, their hard days, their hard times. Life is kind of up and down. I think for me, like, there's a time where was really hard, where it wasn't quite going the way I expected. And I think that taught me more than anything, because I think I learned that there's always hope. And I think that was, and like you said, that support system of going, no matter how hard times get, there's always a light at the end of it, And I think probably going through those times maybe younger has taught me that no matter on the bad times, there's always that kind of light where actually that's what you're striving for. There's that little bit of, they always say hope is the biggest changer of the world. Like, we need someone with hope. And I think probably having that at such a young age meant that I just kind of know that it's up to you to make it better. You just got to keep going.
And I think there's also this element of, and it's what your granddad said, which is, you know, what's meant for you will arrive to you. It's like you really have this air of, you have this air of, you're someone that works really hard, but then you're also someone that just really lets go as well. And I absolutely love that, that combination of like, you know, you don't push things in a direction that is not meant to be. Like, I guess you're in flow, like you're in alignment with what's meant to be. Sorry, this is all getting really spiritual, but like I do see someone that is very much in alignment with themselves. And I think that's part of like your power.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's like, maybe it's a Caribbean Liverpudlian mix where like like you kind of, you know, the tales and the parables and the sayings that come down from generation to generation. And yeah, you just taught to, you know, always be happy for like other people's achievements. So I was saying like, and then be happy for your own, you know, don't covet what other people have, because it's your journey. It's the only journey that you've got. So, and it's yours. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there or how short it takes you or age or anything like that. It's kind of your journey. And sometimes I think, maybe is you can spend so long kind of looking at other people's journey that you forget your own. But it's like, what do we always say? I'm going to go for it. It's like, it's you versus you. You know, that's it. It's trying to be the better version of yourself, because no one else is like you. And if you were, you'd be a clone, and that'd be pretty boring. So enjoy being yourself and paving your own way and just seeing where it gets to. And I think also, like I said, speaking to those who come before you, like yourself or anybody else, I'm in a generation where I'm really fortunate. I've been educated. I'm allowed to be educated. I can choose my partner. I can choose my job. I can have a kid. You know, I can be an engineer. So I think sometimes you have to sit back and be thankful for the things you do have. Not saying you do not strive for the next things. Definitely, you got to have goals and dreams. That's what keeps you pushing. But take the 5 minutes to also be grateful for all the things that people never got before you. Because it's taken a long journey, like we said, to where we want to go. But there's a whole raft that came before me that had it a whole worse, you know? So you got to take 5 minutes to say, yeah, and I'm going to push the dial a little bit more. Then when the time comes, you hand on the baton and they'll push it a bit more. Hand it on and they'll push it a bit more. And we'll be talking about the next thing in maybe a century's time, and it won't be diversity. It'll be the fact that maybe we don't all have AI skills or coding skills. Like, there'll be the next thing. We're just one era in a big world, so all we can do is make it better for the next generation.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Vanessa, it's been so amazing talking to you from this hotel room in the middle of Leicester, sitting on the floor here. But it's just been absolutely incredible talking to you, because you are like a total beacon of light. And I think it's just because you embody the resilience, the empowerment, the confidence, and just the sort of easygoingness of life that I think is really crucial as life skills, but also in engineering, because, you know, we are trying to increase diversity in engineering and inclusion in engineering. I'm keeping them separate after what you said. Like, we are trying to change the face of engineering, right, collectively. But I think we're doing that because we ultimately just want a better society. And you really represent that. Like, you've lived that already, like through your roots and everything. Yeah, and ultimately, like, people like us, we can do outreach, we can go into schools, we can bang the drum about like trying to get more girls into STEM and that kind of thing. But what you said today goes way beyond that. It's not about getting more girls into STEM. It's actually about getting more people to do what they love because it just feels right for them. That for me is the biggest take home from listening to you today. It's like this idea, like, just do what you love, be driven by your inner passions, like follow your inner compass, and can't really go too wrong then.
That's what I think it is. You know, like I said, you can speak to girls, or I will never forget, there was a boy, he was a white boy, brown hair, brown eyes, you know, the ones that people always say is gonna reach the top, etc., get the job, you know, and I was in university and he was so smart, like till this day, he was so smart. And I was like, right, so you're gonna do engineering? And he went, no, boys from my background don't go to university. And I remember that day just sitting there going, isn't the world such a rubbish place? Like, his whole reason, you know, this, for some people who would just look at him in one moment and think the world is just handed to him on a plate. And this is what I was saying, like, it's more than just, it's that inclusion of knowing that, like, yes, you know, we need to think about everyone and their journey. And it's about people being in the right place to do what they love. Here was this boy who the world would go, yeah, white boy, brown hair, brown eyes, you know, he would just fly through. And he's sitting here so bright, one of the brightest people I've ever seen when I was doing like outreach in university, doing engineering, just sitting there talking to him, saying, yeah, I'm from a working class background, people like me don't go to university. And it breaks your heart. Or when you hear people from certain races going, well, I'm never going to reach the top table because people don't look like me. Or women go, well, I don't want to do science because actually, you know, girls don't really do science. And I'm going, yeah, we do. We do lots of it. And also we need it. Use it every day. Like I said before, go a week without your smartphone if you don't want to be an engineer. Or, you know, apps to pick out, not saying women like makeup, but I like apps to pick out my makeup colour. So I can order it online. I don't have to go to shop sometimes. Like, there's such a raft of things out there that we use, and or people go, I just don't understand. You're like, especially when they're talented for it. And especially when they've got that spark and that interest, and you can see it's a spark and that interest, but they're doing it because the world has told them that they can't. And I think that is so saddening, because you miss out on these great people who then, and we know this, like, we will go into what, you know, one school, one university in STEM, and hopefully we can change that set of people that we speak to. But then who's out there changing it for the rest of the world? Who's finding the rest of them that are getting lost in the negativity because they're being told they can't, when actually they really can, and they're maybe the people that are going to go on to change the world, and we've lost them because we've been too busy telling them they can't do something.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much uncovered in this conversation. There's so much to think about in terms of what we can do to encourage more diversity and inclusion, because I think it does, from what I've heard of the way you express things today, actually there's so much we can do as individuals, even if it's just doing what you're doing. It's like you become an example, like people can see the change we're trying to embody, and that will encourage more change. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like the conversations are deepening, because it's now not all these buzzwords of like, let's tick this box and that box. It's like, let's look deeper under the hood at why this is actually important. This isn't just, I don't know, to look good. This is actually to create solutions ultimately that are just better as a result of more diversity. So
I think of course it is. And I think also, you know, when you say do what you're doing, like regardless of, you know, my family may think I'm the most special person in the world, but really I'm what, one of how many billion? You know, the more people you have, there's more people showing that actually it's feasible. Like hopefully, and I'm feeling truly, someone's gonna go, yeah, Ness lives down the road for me. She's from South London. You know, she could do it, why can't I? Or like yourself, with someone going, actually, yeah, she's good. But because there's so many things that you always hear about, you know, especially for ethnic minorities, where you have to work that bit harder, you have to be the best. And yes, I'm not saying you shouldn't work hard and be the best, but that is kind of your excellence. That's how you want your career. That's personal to you, where what things that you find that you want to be good at and excel at. What it can't be is that understandings, you know, you have to feel like you have to be the best because you're carrying the weight for all the other people that can't make it through. Or you know that you're the only person in the industry, or the only person where, you know, you're setting the stage for everyone else. And I think the more we have people and they go, actually, she's like me and she could do it. Or I can be like that person, they've did it. You know, for those who don't want to be the people to take the path untaken or break the box or break the mold, actually they've got someone to kind of look up to and go, I can do that, they did it. And I can follow this route. And I may end up on a way different journey down the line, but at least that starting route I can follow because I know how it was done. And we can share that with them to say, actually, what you need to do is you need to do this, you need to do that, and this is what you need to focus on, because everyone's route is different.
Yeah. Well, Vanessa, I could talk to you for hours. I could listen to you for hours. Yeah, I'm hopeful. After our chat, I'm like, there's a lot of work to do. But actually, like, there's so much goodness that has already happened, because there are so many more role models like you now who are speaking up, and we see and we hear, and so progress is being made. Because honestly, 13 years ago or whatever it was, there was just no one having these kinds of conversations. So if nothing else, like, at least we are talking about it. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening, and please do subscribe to this podcast and maybe even rate and review it if you can. The more ratings and reviews, then the more interest from those trusty algorithms, which could help to increase the reach of this show. And you can watch the video recording of this conversation on YouTube for my new series called eSTEAMd Women. It's all about self-discovery and self-evolution on innovation. So as always, be kind and loving to yourselves, and I wish you all a great week.